So fairly spread out across this continent, and welcome to folks who are uh, watching from other places in the world too. So glad to be with you today and share what we're going to share today. So welcome to How to Not Take It Personally. I am Dr. Pavini Moray. I'm the founder of Wilcelium, and we are a trans-led, queer-led online learning platform. And we're teaching adults who really want lasting love the skills that they need to create that. And every month we offer a free teaching, a free webinar on relevant topics around sex and relationship. And so please feel welcomed and invited to join us every month as part of your journey of erotic freedom. And today we're talking about taking it personally and how to work with that strategy. And so the invitation is go ahead, turn off your other devices, close your other browser windows. Really, this is a time that's a gift that you're giving yourself, and giving yourself that as a present of presence, really allowing yourself to show up and take what you need from this, and you'll get more out of it. This is a participatory webinar, and so at various points I'm going to ask you to drop an answer into the chat, and you'll get more out of it if you participate. And so that's that. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A where I'll give it my best shot to answer all of your questions. And I'll also be sharing with you more about the Well Couple course, which is one of our signature courses, which is enrolling starting in January. And so please stay to the end of the hour, and just grateful to be with you. So let's start talking about taking it personally. So the first thing to know about taking it personally is that this is a strategy. It is a strategy, okay? And because you are here listening to this or watching this, I'm guessing that it's a strategy that you are intimately familiar with. And so if you have ever been told that you're too sensitive, that you shouldn't take things so personally, that you should grow a thicker skin, you are in the right place. Because what I'm about to tell you is that there's nothing wrong with your sensitivity level. You are the right amount sensitive for your system, for your life, and for this moment. So just take a second and let that land. You are the right amount sensitive for your system, for your life, and for this moment. And if you wouldn't mind, as you notice what happens as you hear me say that, just drop it into the chat. How is that to hear that you're the right amount sensitive? Shocking? My eyes widened. As many times as I hear this affirmation, it's still hard to feel. I feel numb in defense. Yeah, thanks for the vulnerability with these. Yeah, it's a big thing that gets put on us, right? It's like, don't be that sensitive. You shouldn't feel what you feel, right? And so we're going to talk about this with a lot of compassion, and we're going to talk about it as a strategy, because we all have strategies about how we manage our internal experience of the world and the impact that it has on us. And I would just invite you to consider that the opposite of taking it personally might not be something that you're super excited to be in the world, right? It might be apathetic. It might be living in denial. It might be being overly aggressive, right? That the opposite of being too taking things personally isn't necessarily a good place for us to be. And taking it personally is a relational strategy. It's about relationships, right? And every strategy that you have has costs and benefits. And so you might be wanting to have more freedom and choice about this particular strategy. about what to do when you receive the impact of an ouch, when someone says something or does something that you feel impact from. And here's the really big revolutionary, counterintuitive takeaway from this whole hour that we're about to spend together, which is that not taking it personally is not the answer. Okay. And actually taking it personally is vastly important. So this is a pretty big reframe probably for most of you. I know it is for me. And I'm just inviting you to try this on for an hour and see how it lands for you, okay? Instead of the solution being, go to this webinar and learn how to not take it personally, I'm inviting you to try on, what if the solution to my sensitivity problem, right, is to take it personally, to feel what I feel, right? So here's the reframe, that when you feel an ouch, when you receive an ouch, the first thing to do is to acknowledge your response, to acknowledge the impact that you're experiencing. So let's talk about what that means. So acknowledging the impact means allowing your system to feel whatever it's feeling, and letting yourself know that you're impacted. So often humans really try to deny the impact, they try to minimize the impact, and only to have it come out later. This is another strategy, right? It's an important strategy also, and it's one that a lot of us use, right? We try to not feel what we're feeling. And so allowing yourself to be actually impacted when you receive an ouch is a huge deal. It's actually a radical practice, right? Because when you acknowledge to yourself the impact, what you're saying is, wow, I am impacted really hard right now. And then you're just with that without trying to fix it or minimize it or explain it away or get out of it, right? You're just right there with that impact. And that's actually the truth that's in your body at that moment. Is it the truth that's always going to be in your body? No, not necessarily, right? But it's at that moment, it's the actual impact that you're experiencing. So let's try this on in practice a little bit. So just inviting you to consider a time recently where you received an ouch. And just call this to mind, you know, in the last week or two, somebody said something or did something that created an ouch for you. Could be little, could be big. And just remembering the context of that moment, the way you felt in your body, the sequence of your emotions, your sensations, the flooding that you experienced, whatever it was. Just calling that to mind. And just this moment of assessment here, what did you do with that impact? How did you survive that ouch? And if you would, in the chat, just write what you did. I texted one of the people on the call to say that I felt hurt. I told my partner about it. I cried for a while. What else? What did you do with that impact? Still hurts. I brought it up, got into a fight, then cried quietly alone until someone noticed. It happened last night. Yeah. So we've all heard the expression, don't take it so personally, right? I know I've tried to do that countless times. I'm sure you have also tried countless times to do it and you weren't able to. I wasn't able to, and that's because it doesn't work, right? Because trying not to take something personally is telling yourself to not feel what you're feeling, right? It's trying hard to not feel your emotions and your sensations. And it's like we can want to not be impacted, but we actually are impacted, right? And so we can't think ourselves out of our feelings, right? So if you've heard this advice, don't take it so personally, and you're like, okay, I shouldn't take this so personally. It's not about me, right? You're trying to think your way out of the feeling of the impact, and it just isn't very effective. So what works better? Well, feelings actually move through more quickly when you turn your attention to them, you acknowledge them. I'm feeling impacted right now, and you just allow. Oh, I allow for that impact, right? We're going to talk about this in a minute, but the magic ingredient is not bringing in the narratives. So just an allowing yourself to feel what you feel is a deeply effective way to be with impact. And it might be counterintuitive. You might think, oh, I don't want to feel that, or I shouldn't feel that, right? Don't take it so personally. But when you allow yourself to feel what you're feeling, you're telling yourself, I feel this way right now. I trust that it's not always going to be true. I trust that these feelings will shift and change. Your first reaction to an ouch is not your final answer, right? It's not you're going to be impacted from now until eternity, because feelings aren't facts. Right? You've probably heard this before too. They're just an experience that you're having in your body, one that you can learn to make space for and to really be with in loving and curious ways. Because they're pointing your attention to the things that need attention, right? They're like the big neon sign pointing, pay attention here, right? And so when we're impacted, what's happening is that your body and your brain are, they get out of sync. They're moving at different speeds often. Something has occurred, this ouch has occurred, right? And it's causing a somatic response in your body. And so this is things like chemicals that are like adrenaline, for example, muscular contractions, survival responses, fight, flight, freeze, appease, dissociate, emotions, feeling sad, angry, scared, grief, changes in your breathing, changes in your heart rate, changes in your temperature. Sometimes your jaw clenches, or sometimes tears form. Your leg muscles might get ready to go. Parts of your body might tense or armor up, especially like throat, chest, eyes, belly. The belly can feel nauseous. All of these are physical sensations, and many more, right, that are happening on a body level. Your experience of time changes. It can either slow down or speed up or both, right? And so this is all like just somatic stuff that happens when you receive some kind of ouchie impact. And so that is all happening, right, on the body level. And then this guy up here is like, oh, what's happening, right? Something's happening. I must explain this. And your brain tries to comprehend what's happening on a body level, right? And so there are these, your well-worn neural pathways to explain the situation, to make sense of the sensations and emotions, right? And these are the narratives that I was referring to earlier. And so the narratives pop up really fast, right? So the ouchie thing happens, you feel the impact, there's all this somatic stuff, and then there's the narrative, right? And whenever we get impacted, especially around wounds, core wounds, the narratives kick in super fast. And so just consider, I'm going to share with you some of these narratives. Consider where your brain goes, and I'm going to ask you. So just think about it, and you can think about it in terms of the impact, the ouch that you just were thinking about, or another one. So you receive impact, your body responds, and your brain thinks, maybe it thinks, they did that on purpose. I know they did that on purpose, right? And so that's betrayal, right? They did that on purpose. Maybe your brain goes to, fuck you. Well, you do blah, 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 right? And so that's a fight response. It's retaliation. It's lashing out, right? Maybe you protect. That's not true. That's not true about me, right? This is probably going to resonate. Not even in the smallest possible way ever in all time could that ever be even a little bit true about me. That's denial, right? I did it wrong. Shit, I did it wrong. I'm not good enough. That's internalizing the ouch. That's shame, right? They don't like me. Rejection. Now they're going to leave. I mean, how did I miss that? I'm so dumb, right? That's self-abandonment. I need to get out of here now. That's a flight response. Brain fog, confusion. What's happening right now? That's a freeze response, right? So these narratives, the freeze response isn't really a narrative, but all the other ones, all those other narratives, they did that on purpose. Fuck you, you do that too. That's not even true. No way is that even possibly true about me. I did it wrong. You don't like me. Now you're gonna leave me. How did I miss that? I'm so dumb. I need to get out of here. Like all of those narratives are just trying to explain, to make sense of the set of sensations and emotions that we're having on a body level. Okay. So when you get impacted, and we all have like favorites of these, we have these well-worn neural pathways, right? So when you get impacted, where does your brain go? Which one of these you're like, oh yeah, that's what I usually think to myself? And go ahead and put that into the chat. Yeah, I should have just kept quiet. Why did I say anything? Right? I should have not revealed myself. Abandonment, self-abandonment, rejection, flight response, self-abandonment, internalization, rejection, self-abandonment, and another one, but you think you missed it. Yeah, it's like the narratives just kick in, right? And it's really, they're very compelling. They're very convincing. That this is the truth, right? That we're experiencing the truth in this moment, when actually what we're experiencing is our brain trying to make sense out of our body's response, right? And so this is what's called assigning intention based on impact, right? So we think we know what someone's intention was based on the impact that we are receiving. And this is just a human habitual thing that we do. And it, you know, I'm always about how can I live my best life, right? And that often means like really challenging the practices that cause me pain and suffering. And this is a big one for me, right? Of that I have a feeling state in my body and my brain has made a story of it. And it's insisting that it's true, which is creating a lot of suffering for me. Like if I'm thinking my partner betrayed me, right? It's really painful, right? There is a practice of separating these two things, right? Of just being with the sensations and the emotions on a body level without bringing in the story. This is a big deal practice. It's a hard one, and it's, you know, something that I'm going to be practicing for the rest of my life. We want to take it personally, right? Because it's validating something inside us that is unresolved, some part of wounding from our past, right? It's like, aha, there's the proof, right? And so there's that compulsion to believe those narratives. And so to just like stay with the feelings, to acknowledge the feelings, I'm feeling impacted. And now I'm just going to be with my feelings without grabbing for those narratives, huge, right? So I'm going to pause there for a second, because we're going to talk about a little bit about this thing about intention, because I think it's important to talk about it. I'm going to screen share with you. Okay. So this is my very scientific drawing of impact. So at the top is the ouch. Somebody said something or did something and you received impact. You feel an ouch from that thing, right? And so that impact can be intentional or it can be unintentional. And we're going to talk about a little bit, just for the sake of giving our frontal brains something to chew on here. So intentional impact, when someone says something intentionally to hurt, right? It's like one thing of that is being overt, like an insult, a criticism, a critique, something designed to poke you, something said out of a spirit of meanness, with the intention to create more impact, right? So for example, let's say you say something, you say, oh, that hurt my feelings. And they're like, oh, God, you're so sensitive, right? Or you always do that. You're such a baby, right? That's an overt, intentional act, right? Compounding whatever the thing that they initially said was, right? So there's the thing that they initially said that can be intentional. There's ways that people create impact that are intentional, but that they're not necessarily aware that it's intentional, right? So this is through passive aggressive communication or microaggressions. And so both of these things are fairly close to the surface, but maybe not necessarily in full awareness, right? So when someone has intentionally said something shitty, right? It could be because they're being passive aggressive and their needs aren't being met. And so they have not communicated in a skillful way to you. And they have created that ouch intentionally through being snarky or, sideways compliments, or what is it called? Backhanding compliments, or like this, right? So it's intentional, but it's kind of sneaky. And then there are microaggressions, which can create ouch. And so we know that oppression is a real force that impacts people every day, right? And microaggressions are intentional because there's a wealth of resource, right, at our disposal to educate ourselves, to learn how to communicate in ways that validate and respect people's experiences. And microaggressions, they can come from a place of willful ignorance. Not always, sometimes that's just that I didn't know that yet, right? And when somebody receives feedback or when they receive feedback about that, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, I'm gonna learn more about that, right? And so it's intentional because it's reinforcing dominant oppressive paradigms, right? And there is a lot of information to help correct, right, how we communicate. So those are the big categories, the big buckets I'm seeing in terms of intentional hurt, right? And then there's all the other side, which is the unintentional hurt, which is you got triggered, but somebody didn't know it was your trigger, right? You you have something that really hurts deeply around animal abuse, for example, and someone said, well, you can't swing a cat in here without hitting whatever, and you feel that impact, and it was unintentional on their part, right? Because it hit your trigger, it hit your wound. And part of unintentional impact can come from that they didn't read your mind. You didn't tell them, they didn't read your minds, they didn't know. And so there was impact created. Like in all of these cases, impact is created, and we're going to attend to the impact, but we're just breaking it down here of how does impact happen, right? Someone can be unintentionally create impact by just being unattuned to you, by being kind of obtuse, or you know, not realizing that that you are a human being with dignity and feelings, right? They're just like really fixated on their situation, on their goal, and they kind of like miss that they're dismissing your humanity in the process. Unintentional impact can also come through value differences. I get this one a lot, right? So someone will be really excited to talk about their new diet. And you know, I have a value around anti-dieting, right? And not food restricting. And so they'll, it can create impact for my body as a person who lives in a fat body, and it's a value difference, right? It's not necessarily a microaggression, although it could be, I could perceive it that way. It's also just a value difference. They value this thing that I don't value, right? So just to break this down of how impact actually happens, right? And that we are in any case impacted. And this is the thing that we focus on. We focus on the fact that we're impacted. We focus on acknowledging that to ourselves. I was impacted by that, right? I wish that I wasn't, but I was. And that's the truth of living in this moment. So holding that framework of that there's intentional ouches and there's unintentional ouches, I want to talk a little bit about feedback. Some real talk about it. I studied conflict resolution, and one of the things that I found fascinating when we learned about feedback was that most feedback is 95% projection and 5% nugget of truth. And we're going to talk about projection in just a second. And it becomes your job to discern where that 5% is for you, right? So this is kind of getting towards that thing where people say, oh, well, it's not about you, right? Why are you taking it so personally? Well, 5% of it's about you, right? So it's still about you, and you're still impacted, so it's still about you. Feedback is someone else's truth. They are delivering to you this thing that is their truth, their perception, their understanding, their experience, their opinion, their judgment, right? Other people's feelings, which is what that all is, other people's feelings don't have to be your facts. You get to have your own experience of your own truth, your experience, your judgment, your opinions, your feelings, right? That is separate from someone else's thing. So just because someone says something does not make it true, right? But this is really hard if one of your main strategies is appeasement, right? As a child, if that was your best strategy for safety was appeasement, hearing somebody, especially an authority figure, give you feedback about something that they don't like about what you're doing, is really hard to just realize that that's their opinion, right? Like, they don't like it when I eat all the Oreos. I like it just fine, right? It's fine. You know, what's the problem? Just because someone says something does not make it true, but it can be really, really hard to tease those things apart, right? But you get to check in with your own truth, and you get to ask in those ouch moments, well, is this my experience? You know, let's say your partner comes to you and says, you know, I really dislike it that you always leave dirty dishes in the sink. Right? I think it's really rude. It's really rude of you that you do that. It's like inconsiderate. You're not respecting the household, right? Well, just because your partner is having that opinion doesn't make it true, right? It's just their opinion, and they're giving you feedback, and you get to receive that how you do. You get to be impacted by it. Like, oh, my partner thinks I'm a terrible person. They think I'm a slob. They think I'm rude, whatever. And then you get to check in with your own truth. Well, if I was living alone, like, this wouldn't be a problem. I just leave mugs in the sink. It's not a problem, right? Is what they're saying true for me? Because feedback is really about relationship. And we all have to teach each other how to be in relationship with us, because we are unique and we're individuals, and what I like, you might not like. And we can't make assumptions about how people want to be loved, right? They have to teach us and we have to teach them. But feedback is really about learning how to be in relationship with someone, and learning and teaching them how to be in relationship with you, right? And feedback means that I tell you about the impact that I've experienced from you. Like, we don't argue with the impact. We don't deny the truth of the impact that somebody's experiencing. You know, like we check in with, like, if your partner came and said the thing about the dishes and you're like, well, if it was just me, it wouldn't be a problem, right? So you're holding on to your own truth. Like, I don't actually think that this is big a problem, but my partner is really impacted by this. And that's true for them, right? So both truths coexist, and we get wide somatically. We get wide so that we can hold all of it. My truth, your truth, somewhere in the middle we meet, right? The feedback is telling someone about the impact that you have experienced from them, or hearing the impact that they've experienced from you, and being able to make corrections and adjustments. Let me tell you what feedback is not. It's not blasting someone. It's not condoning someone on social media. It's not constant criticism. It's not commenting on someone's behavior without a reasonable, actionable request for change, right? It's not complaining about what someone does, but then not showing up to see if they can make change, and not being available to that, right? Like, when we're in a relationship, we give each other feedback. And that feedback, like receiving the feedback, has impact too, right? And you get to, when somebody gives you feedback, of course you're going to be impacted, right? And your feedback is going to cause impact, right? And so then we get into that question, which somebody brought up, of, oh, I shouldn't have said anything because now my partner or my person's impacted and my friend is impacted. And I wish I hadn't brought it up because now I have to deal with their feelings, right? So isn't it messy being human? So I'm curious, as you're hearing this, around feedback, the piece around discerning the nugget of truth. How's that land for you? How does it land that feedback is mostly projection and some truth? And just how does it land for you in terms of this container of taking it personally is important? Go ahead and put that into the chat. I'm open to the idea that there's a nugget of truth. I like the idea of feeling the impact and letting it wash through me. Yeah, good. What else? It's challenging when the people who I'm trying and think I need to stay in relationship with don't seem as self-aware of their responses, and I don't have spoons to educate them every time, for sure. Yeah. When I got canceled and lost my community, there was no feedback on what they thought I did wrong, and there was no opportunity for repair. It's excruciating. Yeah. So this is not, right, it's not relational, right? The canceling people obviously is not relational. And just sending care for that experience, and a lot of love for that experience. And, you know, it's just so important to belong. It's so important to have the sense of embodied belonging in community. And this is a real harm that we're doing to each other. So I'm sending care to that experience. The projecting, it's something that we all do, right? And what's happening, the mechanism of it, the psychological mechanism, it's like you're taking something, something you believe is negative in yourself, in your past, in your behavior, and you're just like throwing it onto someone else, just like a projector casts an image on a screen, right? And so then you believe that that emotion or that issue is someone else's instead of yours. And this is a protective strategy. Projection is a completely, just like denial, completely protective strategy. It's the opposite of vulnerability, right? When we're projecting. And just to respond to that thing of like self-awareness, yeah, it's like most people aren't aware when we're projecting, we have very little awareness of the fact that we're taking this part of us that we haven't accepted or that we don't like and throwing it at someone else, right? And it shows up around emotions that we don't like, anything that we find annoying, embarrassing, traumatic, unacceptable, disgusting, like any of that stuff, things that you have not accepted about yourself. And it's kind of like, I was thinking as I was preparing for today, it's like that saying of like, when you point the finger at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you, right? It's like you're saying, you do this. And what would it be like to say, I do this, right? I do this sometimes, right? And to find some compassion and some acceptance for the part of you that does that, right? And so there's those unacceptable feelings, they're unaccepted, and they're so uncomfortable inside that we look for ways to get rid of them as quickly as possible. And the oldest trick in the book is just to throw it at somebody else, blame somebody else, right? And we all do this. We all project. And so we can find compassion, right? We can find compassion for projection here. I was working with a client once, and she told me that men don't respect me. And I said, well, do you respect you? And she realized how much her own lack of self-respect was at play, right? And so she was taking that, like, I haven't quite done all the work to find all that self-respect, and I'm putting it out there, right, on others. And so it makes sense, like I project, you project, we all project, right? And so it brings to the question of like seeking that nugget of what is actually real, what is actually personal, right? In all of the thousands of pieces of information about our behavior and about our beingness that's coming towards us, what is actually personal, right? And so here's what I've come to about this, that feedback that acknowledges your humanity, that is relational, that is in connection with, that gives opportunity for growth and change. Like that's feedback that I want to listen to, right? Feedback that holds like, oh yeah, Pavini, you are, you have these parts that are really well developed, and you have these parts that are really messy, and like I can see this thing, and let me gentle you, here, so that you can actually be within your window of tolerance as you work to change that thing. And I'm going to stick around to watch you do that, right? And so that's what's actually personal. And so I want you to think about someone in your life who holds you with that lens of it, that it is personal because it's about you, but it acknowledges your humanity. And when that person gives you feedback, it matters because they're holding the whole of you. Who is that person? Is there someone like that in your life where you trust that that you can receive that? And just go ahead and put that in the chat, their first name or their initials. Pomona, R-I-N-L-R. Great, thank you. Yeah, so it's like those are the people that we can really let that in from, right? Because we understand that they're acknowledging the fullness of our humanity. And when I think about feedback, giving feedback, what I think about is I am not willing to let someone else dismiss my humanity, and I'm not willing to dismiss someone else's humanity, right? Because it is personal. There's no separating it, right? Because we're persons, we're humans, we have feelings. And so that sense of remembering that I have my dignity, you have your dignity, we all need to belong. And therefore, this process of sharing impact always has to take into account someone else's humanity, right? Whether or not that impact was intentional or unintentional, I'm still impacted. I'm still going to share that impact because I'm committed to radical honesty in relationship. And I acknowledge that they're a human being who's receiving that feedback, right? The role here of vulnerability, because I appreciate that thing about like, well, I shouldn't have said anything, I shouldn't have brought it up, right? And you've probably heard of the ouch. I think I learned this from nonviolent communication, but just to say ouch, right? So we're saying ouch in the moment to ourselves. We're saying, I'm impacted. And saying ouch verbally out loud, it allows you to acknowledge that impact in the moment, right, to someone else. And it gives them the benefit of the doubt because you're out of that whole, was that intentional, was it unintentional, all the narratives. All you're doing is staying with what's happening here and you're saying, ow, right? It allows someone into your process. It keeps you out of projection. It invites relationality. It invites people to, because like if I say something, sometimes this just happened to me recently. I said to my kid, what I was trying to say was, your body is so strong. And what I said was, you're built like a horse. Right. And this is my teenage daughter, and it was devastating for her to hear that. And like, it was so not my intention, but my intention wasn't important. The impact was. And when she shared the impact with me, I immediately wanted to be accountable for that. Right. It's like, oh my gosh, totally. That hurts so much to hear it like that. That was so my bad. I said that really poorly. I said that really unskillfully. I'm so sorry, right? It invites that kind of accountability, but she was vulnerable with me. She trusted me with the impact, right? And we do this with people that we've built trust with. So I want to just walk us through. I know that this is a lot of content. All right, we're gonna just walk through this working with ouch. So just so you get a visual of this, right? So step one is acknowledging the impact, saying it to yourself, I'm impacted. Step two, feeling what you feel, noticing the sensations, the emotions without judgment. You're just allowing for what is in this moment. Step three is to offer yourself support and care for the impact that you're experiencing. Regardless of the ouch, the intentionality or lack, none of that matters. It's like you're impacted. And so you offer yourself support and care. This is an essential piece of self-compassion, really. And when all of that has happened and you feel more centered, you can invite in your curiosity, right? You can get curious about, and you can bring in your critical thinking. Oh, is there anything on my side of the street? What wound did that hit? Or what boundary did that hit? Or is there anything that needs my tending from my past? Or is there just a spot that needs some love here inside my heart, right? Engaging anything that's on my side of the street that's needing attention. And if there is a nugget, if this has been feedback, right, instead of just an offhand comment that hurt, is there a nugget here for me? And actually, you can still get the nugget even if it's not in feedback, right? It's like, for example, if someone says something to you like, that is not a fetching outfit, right? And you feel that impact, you feel that ouch. Is there a nugget for you here in, oh, I am impacted by others' judgments of my my outerwear, right? Like, oh, is that something that needs my tending? That's a silly example, but you get the point, right? If like there can be nuggets for you, and I said, like self-love is about being deeply selfish and like getting the good stuff for you, the healing for you, right? What's the nugget for you here? So, and then you can decide if you're going to share that impact or not with the other person. You know, with people who you care deeply about, it's tricky, right? Because you know it's going to impact them because they're going to feel bad that they impacted you. And so then there's going to be that whole piece to contend with. And so I am a proponent of sharing the impact, but doing it in a way where you feel spacious with time. You know that there's no urgency to share the impact. You get to do that when it feels right to you, and with the level of structure and support that feels right to you. So just in a minute, we're going to have some Q&A and answer your questions about taking it personally. I hope that this reframe of like, yes, take it personally and then work with it is helpful to you. I'm going to just talk about a little bit about our course that we're offering in January. So this is the 2022, it's hard to believe it's that almost 2022 cohort of the Well Couple course. And this is a course that for folks who are in relationship. It's for both people in the course to show up and take this year-long course together, who are committed to learning and playing and healing and practicing and growing together to develop creative, thriving relationships that really allow the full humanity of everyone to show up without compromise. And so it's been such a joy to take all of the professional work that I've done with couples and also in my personal long-term relationship and build a course that is based on really solid relationship principles that really invite people to be their full selves, right? And so this is it's skills-based. It's about learning practical skills, embodied learning with your partner. And it's for folks who have been together for a minute, weathered a hard season or two, and who are like, yeah, I want to be with you. I love you. And woo, this is feeling a little rough. We need some skill here. And the container is just full of practical information and practice and feedback, but also a lot of just like love, kindness, support for like what it is to be a human trying to be in relationship with other humans. All different kinds of couples, different relationship configurations, different sexual orientations, just different gender presentations, gender identifications, all this stuff will be held. There's going to be 16 couples, only 16 couples that are in it. It starts in January. And it's how I'm working with couples right now instead of doing that work in private practice. So our cohort last year got really amazing results back from the brink of breakup, and just really they're doing really well, all of them. So the process is that you fill out a really short application just to make sure that the programs are good fit for you, and then we reach out, we schedule a time to talk with you. It's just you're talking with me, and it's very low. It's not high sales pressure. It's just very human-centric listening and trying to figure out like what's going on for you in your partnership and could this be a good fit. I'm excited that it's a year of just continual wraparound support. The community aspect is really important. So yeah, the next step, if you're interested in that, I'm going to put this right into the chat, is you fill out that. It's about 5 or 6 questions, and then we'll reach out and schedule a time for us to talk. So that's that. Cool. Thanks for hearing that. And so I just want to make some space now for your questions of like what, when you think about taking it personally in relationship, how to take it more personally with more skill, what comes up for you? How can I support you right now? Let's go ahead and ask any questions. Oh, thanks. I'll put it in. You see that? There we go. Cool. What are your questions? You can either put them into the chat or the Q&A. Okay. What can I do with the pain from being canceled and not knowing why? Well, I think obviously support is essential, right? And I'm wondering just about community with other folks who have been canceled. If you aren't aware of it, Clementine Morgan has a podcast called Fucking Canceled that I think is a pretty good resource. She's coming at it from a kind of an academic perspective of being canceled. But I just wonder about, because it's happened to so many folks now. It's like, oh yeah, there's probably, folks, I mean, I have a lot of friends and collaborators who have had this experience. And I think talking about it and making sure that you're getting support, because I think the mechanism it works on is shame and humiliation. And how do we not take that on, right? How do we, when that is hurled at us, how do we not take that on? And in my personal experience of receiving intense projection like that, it takes time. It takes nervous systems time, because it's such a dysregulating experience to receive and to try and process through. And having, I think, maybe therapy spaces or healing spaces where you're deliberately working on that. And it's going to be a process of lots of different things, and ritual, I think, is really helpful. I've used ritual to help process through some of that stuff. And I think also just like acknowledging that it hurts, just like it's unfair, it's excruciating, it really hurts, to not try and dismiss your own humanity or minimize it, just like acknowledging the pain, doing the grief work that needs to be done, and just anchoring in also positive resources, like where is the love for me? Where are the people who stand by me, who love me, who don't cancel me, who don't participate in cancel culture, who are, in here with me, and who are going to be there for my life, for me? And how can I put more weight on the things that they say, right, than the things that other people say, right? So it's like, how can I align with those positive resources and really root there, I think, are the best suggestions I have. And just, again, much love for that experience. Okay, how do I protect my energy as a highly sensitive person? I just don't have time and energy to spaciously walk others through their responses at any moment, but feel trapped into it sometimes because I'll tend to my emotions on my own and think I've let it go. But then when I re-enter shared space with the person who ouched me, I will have a somatic response of putting up a wall and feeling unsafe. Yeah, I think this is completely reasonable, right? Of like, if you have, so what I'm understanding is you receive an ouch, and at that moment, the best thing to do is to tend to yourself, right? And because if you bring it up with them, then it's going to be managing their response, and you don't have the energy for that at that moment, right? And so you take space, you go and you tend to yourself, and you find regulation, and then you come back to space with them, and you're like, "Ooh, I don't trust you. There's been a breach here," right? Well, I mean, I think first, just to validate that seems completely normal to me. That's what would happen. It's like we can regulate ourselves. We know how to come back to center, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the impact didn't happen, right? And so sometimes, it just depends on your question is, how can I protect my energy? I think it really depends on who you want to be in those repair relationships with, of who do you want to bring the actual impact to, and how do you want to build those relationships of trust that you can bring hard things to each other. And I'll give you an example. I recently was impacted by someone who I work with, and I was pretty dysregulated by it, and I knew that it was unintentional, but it didn't make the impact go away, right? And I went away, dealt with myself, came back to our next meeting, and needed to explain it to her. But we have such a trust history that I knew that she would be able to hear it, that I trusted that she would respond positively, which she did, right? But there are people who, like, I don't trust their capacity to do that. And so for those folks, it's harder. It's like, yeah, maybe I do keep you at arm's length. Maybe, until you've done more work, I'm not going to let you closer to me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just, I think it's like you get to have a capacity. You do have a capacity, and you get to have a capacity, and other people's healing and spiritual work is not yours, to manage. And so it's like, who are my 5 besties who I trust are going to show up and be able to hear impact, and be able to do that in a way that is relational, right? Without creating more ouches, because now I have to take care of their feelings. And so I think that's a question of discernment for you, of like, who do you bring the impact to and who do you not? And I think that's how you regulate the energy piece. I hope that's helpful. Cool. All right, friends. So I want to thank you for your attention today, and to being somebody who shows up and thinks about these things. And I hope that you're leaving here with more permission to feel what you feel, and to acknowledge the impact, and to be really, really sweet with yourself, and then decide how to move forward as you do in your relationships. And so yeah, just grateful for that, for being human on the planet with you. And yeah, and we'll have another webinar next month. I hope you come to that. And until then, I am Dr. Pavini Moray, or Wasilia, and I wish you breath and pleasure. See you next time.